All right, you guys. Hi, it's here for day 5. I think that's where we're at. So, How High the Moon by Karen Parsons. Just a quick recap. It is a story about a family in the South in the 1940s in I can never say it right. Alcaloo, South Carolina, right? So time was different, things were different. Um, and it's kind of like just a great context and a lovely story about a family. We know that there's Ella and Henry and Myrna and Grandma and Poppy. Was it Granny and Poppy? And so we learned a little bit more about Myrna yesterday, and that she and her friend had a terrible encounter where they happened to walk across a really scary moment in the woods. And it made her blood boil. I remember that part of the story. All right, so today's chapter is also Myrna. I am ready to go because I have my Post-its, I have my pen, I have my book, I have some water, I am in a comfy place. It is quiet right now, so I'm not distracted and I can just focus on reading. All right, so I'm going to make sure that I'm stopping and jotting things that I think are important. All right, Myrna. Every year, the fall church picnic was held down by Creek's Clearing. Several men from the church, including Poppy, would bring tables and chairs for the picnic. We'd spread lots of blankets out, too. There was music and dancing. Everyone from the congregation brought food, and the kids would spend hours up in the trees or down by the creek. This might be a great connection that you are making right off the bat. If your family goes to church and you guys have church picnics, right? Or even any kind of celebration where you go out to a picnic with a group of people, this might be, one of those connections that you're making between your life and the book that you're reading, right? Self to text connection. So you could write that down right now and make that connection of like, oh yeah, when I go to a church picnic and we're outside and the kids are all playing, there's music, all sorts of things. We got there just past noon when most folks had already arrived. Peggy and Loretta immediately came running. They tore me away from the family, chattering about George Steiny. Apparently, they'd overheard George say that he was waiting on Myrna to show up. My whole face caught fire when they told me. I did a quick scan of the grounds. I spotted Fred in bed, sitting on a couple of low branches of the oldest tree in the clearing, close to the creek. George was perched on a high limb, looking right at me. I grabbed hold of the lace ribbon round my neck and turned away. "Where's the food?" I asked. They quickly led me to 3 large tables laden with chicken, biscuits, rice, greens, and more. Henry and Ella were already there, heaping mounds of mashed potatoes and gravy onto their flimsy paper plates. "Oh my, oh my, oh my!" Henry sang, rubbing his hands together and grinning over the feast spread out in front of him. "I ate so much," said Loretta, holding her pot belly with both hands. "Right when I got here. It's so good. When Get you some candied yams. Miss Priscilla made them, and they are better than anything you've ever had in your life." "I made the buttermilk pie right there." Peggy pointed to her golden pie with its matching perfect golden crust. Peggy favored herself the best baker in all of Clarendon County. She brought a pie, always buttermilk, to every occasion, and they usually were near perfection. It was her special badge of honor. Maybe you like to make a pie. "Yeah, but you didn't eat nothing. How come you won't eat?" Loretta got up close to Peggy and crossed her arms. "I told you I'm not hungry," Peggy said, her voice wavering a little. She bent her head, walked past Loretta, and poured herself a glass of water. "Why are you so concerned?" Without waiting for an answer, she walked off, shaking her head and pretending to be focused on the boys in the tree. You crazy trying to watch your figure. You're already a beanpole. I swear, if I turn you sideways, you'll disappear. Tell her, Myrna, she's too skinny to not be eaten. You think boys like that? I don't care what they like, Peggy called over her shoulder. Just stop bothering me. I'm not hungry. George Steiny was no longer on his high branch. He wasn't on the lower branches with Fred and Ben either. I turned to see if maybe he'd headed off for the creek, and when I turned, I bumped square into him. Behind me, Loretta let out a sharp laugh before running off, dragging Peggy with her, both of them giggling loudly. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't know you were. Dang, girl, he laughed, grabbing a napkin from the table to clean off the punch I'd made him spill down the front of his pants. I looked over at the tree again and saw the boys were all there grabbing their midsections and laughing up a storm. Well, what do you expect walking up on me like that? What'd you expect? Uh-huh. Okay, Miss Myrna, it's my fault. He tossed the paper napkin on the table, and he stepped back and smiled. That's a pretty dress, he said. He lifted the end of my lace scarf and nodded approvingly. You look real nice. I put a hand on my hip and waited for the joke that was to follow. But it didn't come. I like the picnic better over here. More space than on church grounds, he said, taking in the clearing, the trees, the creek. I haven't been to the creek since I was, I don't know, maybe 10. It's been a long time. We go fishing there sometimes. Well, I used to. Not so much these days, I said. I used to love it. He was staring off at the water, remembering something. Me too. You can get some big bass there. Peggy, Loretta, Fred, and Ben were still hanging around the tree, laughing and goofing around. They'd lost all interest in me and George. Will you walk with me down to the creek? George asked. I was taken aback by how sweet he was. I was so used to him yucking it up with Ben and Fred. Everything was always a joke with these boys. This was a side of him I had never seen. He offered me his elbow, and I quickly looked over at the tree. Don't mind them, he said, without so much as a glance in their direction. No one was watching us. I took his arm and let him lead me the way. The creek's water flowed easily and with little sound. Sometimes the current creek could be dramatic, rough, and even dangerous, but today it was peaceful, as gentle as George. It's much smaller than I remembered, he said. Without thinking, I rested my hand on his shoulder so he could unstrap my sandals. Nope, so I could unstrap my sandals. Ooh, scandal. I could unstrap my sandals. His hand shot up and grabbed mine. Careful there, he said. He pretended he was trying to keep me from falling, but I knew he just wanted to hold my hand. Here. He led me up onto one of the large rocks along the water. Once I was situated, he climbed onto the rock next to me. We sat there in a beautiful, awkward silence and listened to the water's tranquil roll. Tranquil's kind of a big word. If it's not something you know, maybe write it down. I was baptized here, I said, finally breaking the quiet. Me too. Brother Gavin. Yeah, Brother Gavin performed mine too. Remember Sunday school with him? Not a whole lot, to be honest. I shook my head. I do remember that Sister Ellen serves us beets. Those beets. Ugh, I refuse to eat them. Aw, you gotta give 'em a try. I loved 'em, he laughed. I did. Kids, oh, I did. Kids would stack those little discs on my plate when she wasn't looking. I gobbled them up. No, George, no, I cringed. Beets are good, and they're good for you. You know what? You need to have me cook some for you. I'll make you some killer beets, some sweet potato pon. You cook? Yes, ma'am. It's my passion. He was serious. It was so cute. Don't go telling folks, though. I mean, I really cook. Can't find greens better than me. Whoops. Can't find greens better than mine. They're they out there on the big table. He motioned to the picnic area. Well, well, I guess I'm going to have to go get me some of them greens before the day's over, Mr. Chef. You think I'm playing? But I'm serious. My pop says I could have my own restaurant one day. Lord knows I got enough family to help me run it. The sun shifted, and the huge oaks around the clearing began making wide shade. Goosebumps covered my arms. I guess George saw them, because he removed his coat and put it over my shoulders. I remember looking forward to hearing you sing in church before I even knew you, he said. I felt myself blush and had to look away. I couldn't remember when I'd first seen George. He and his family had just always been around, at school, at church, in the neighborhood, but it wasn't until last year or two that I really noticed him. Hey, I'm going to pause for just a second here because did you guys hear what just happened? She's writing a personal narrative, right? This whole book is just full of personal narratives. It's moments in time from different characters' perspectives. It's their feelings, right? And right now we're hearing about Myrna and her perspective. So she just did one of our prompts that we talked about today, which is kind of cool that it happened just live right now. She's taking in her story, think of the watermelon, right? And how a story is a watermelon, but it's got all these little seeds in it. So part of her seed of her story is she's remembering the first time that she saw George. That was a first. So in her story, in her personal narrative, she starts telling us about the first time she sees someone. So when she says, which is funny because she starts off with, I couldn't remember. So I couldn't remember when I'd first seen George. That's her introduction. He and his family had just always been around, at school, at church, in the neighborhood. But it wasn't until last year or two that I really noticed him. Okay, that's like her whole introduction and beginning about when she's going to talk to us about George. So she's doing, the author just did exactly what we talk about. Kind of cool. Got to keep your eyes open for these things. All right. So he says, would you sing for me now? He asked. What? Now? I blushed. He nodded. Come on, just a little bit. Don't nobody sing prettier than you, Myrna. Oh, stop. Come on, girl. You know it's true. He gave me a poke to the ribs. Stop. He did it again. That tickles. Stop it. Give me some song, girl. Come on. He sat back, grinning. Okay, wait. I looked up into the beautiful day. In the distance, I could hear the music and laughter from the picnic. But they were far away from George and me. Couldn't nobody hear me. Oh, great. There's a song here. I'm not a singer, guys, but here we go. Oh, they tell me of a home far away beyond the skies. Oh, they tell me of a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an uncloudy day. Oh, they tell me of a home where my friends have gone. Oh, they tell me that land far away, where the tree of life in eternal bloom sheds its fragrance throughout the uncloudy day. That was kind of embarrassing. When we returned to the picnic, our friends had all abandoned the tree to join the large crowd in the center of the field. The phonograph was turned up louder than before. Folks were whooping it up and dancing. George and I found a clear spot where we could see through the walls of bodies. Granny and Poppy were dancing. Miss Priscilla and her daughter Theodora danced together. Amy was dancing with her daddy. When she saw George, she ran to him and dragged him out there with her. Without hesitation, he spun her around, flipped her around. She giggled uncontrollably. I just prayed George didn't ask me to dance. No way. I was already wearing his coat. It was enough scandal for one day. Loretta and Peggy wasted no time descending on me and filling my ears full of questions. Where'd you go? What did you talk about? Did he ask you to be his girlfriend? Did he try to kiss you? Did he kiss you? I shushed them good, told them to mind their business. Soon enough, their attention shifted, distracted by Ben and Fred dancing on the grass. Henry and Ella were dancing too. Henry was dancing with his mom, and some friends from school were teaching Ella a new dance. They danced close to us, and Ella and Henry both made sure to make silly faces at me as they went by. Henry, always the show off on the dance floor, jumped up in the air and landed on the ground in a half split. The girls, not to be outdone, tried out some fancy dance moves of their own. Loretta leaned in to me and pointed to Ella. I swear, sometimes she looks just like a white girl. She threw her head back, laughing. It made us all laugh. But when I looked over at Ella again, she stopped dancing and was staring at the ground. She shot a quick look over at me, over her shoulder, before walking off the dance floor and to the food tables. I don't know why that last part made me get all teary. I think because it's so hard for Ella, right? She doesn't want to be different than anybody. She wants to just be the same. People are constantly like calling her out on something she has no control over. And I think just that little phrase right there just kind of shared her pain. And that makes me feel sad. I don't want that for any of you all. All right. Have you guys ever been to a party of any sort? It could be through the church, it could be through whoever, where you were dancing and eating and chatting with your friends. Maybe that's something you can make a connection to. Anyways, that's the last of our chapter for today. Tomorrow's chapter is called Henry, so we get to go back to Henry. I did notice, I couldn't help but notice, but it said he was dancing with his mom. We haven't really met his mom yet. I wonder if we're going to know more. It's a wondering that I have. I wonder if we're going to know more about that. So, all right, friends. Thank you all for your day today. I really appreciate you, and I am so happy to celebrate you guys and all your successes with me. Thanks for listening, and we'll come back together tomorrow.